Okay, I think everyone have a seat. We'll get started. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll start with introductions. Steve, you want to start here in the front?
Steve, KC5, SAS.
Vernon, AA50.
Mary, WB5, LBR.
Arnold, KF5HW. Dave, K5CG.
We have three speakers tonight. We're going to try to have some mini presentations. I'm going to ask the speakers to try to keep their presentation to about 15 minutes if you can. And then we'll go over some of the announcements following the presentations. I'd like to try to get the presentation started. Vern, you want to go first? Or?
It doesn't matter.
You're sitting right here.
Oh, okay.
Most of you know me, I'm Vernon, AA50, and my passion in this hobby has been DX for the last 40 years or so. And I have all of the DXCC entities confirmed with the exception of Scarborough Reef, Bravo Sugar 7 Hotel. The only reason I don't have that one is there's nobody there. Not likely to be anybody there anytime soon. So I'm patiently waiting for that one to come up. But I just thought I'd mention a little bit about DXing and to tell you what works for me. And you can take it for what it's worth. You'll develop your own style. Many of you are seasoned DXers already, and what I'm going to say will probably be repetitious. So bear with me, because we do have some new hands and some new DXers in the group. The first prerequisite, I would say, to working DX is to learn how to operate your radio in the split mode. All the DXpeditions are going to be operating split. They'll be transmitting on one frequency and listening in a band up above it, usually 5 or 10 kc up the band or below the band or wherever they specify, depending on how big the pilot is. You need to be able to operate your radio split in order to make the contacts, because the DX station is not going to be listening on his own transmit frequency. Most modern radios now have two VFOs, VFO-A and VFO-B, and a button or switch or software selection or whatever that says split. Look at your manual and learn how to use that function, because that is absolutely crucial to being a successful DXer. As a matter of fact, it's essential from day one. You've got to be able to operate split, because if you transmit on the DX station's transmit frequency, you're going to have a dozen or more frequency cops start razzing you about it. You'll get all kinds of disparaging remarks about your intelligence. You'll question your ancestry. All of these things because you're transmitting on the DX station's transmit frequency. So by all means, become proficient in operating your radio split before you attempt to operate in a DX pilot. It'll save you a lot of grief, a lot of headaches, and a lot of embarrassment. In the heat of the chase, a lot of guys eventually will accidentally transmit on the wrong VFO. When that happens, don't say anything about it. let it go, because after he calls a couple times, he'll probably realize he's on the wrong VFO. If you yield to the temptation to speak up and tell him about it, what you're doing is creating more interference than the guy who was on the wrong VFO. And anytime the DXpedition starts, you will hear all these self-appointed frequency cops yelling things like, he's listening up, split, AA50, he's not listening here, you stupid lid, you know. So don't get involved in that. These guys are causing more interference than the guys they're trying to police. So under any circumstances, don't transmit on the DX station's transmit frequency. So how do you operate and break through the pileups? Well, first of all, you can't break through the pileup because there are 10,000 stations calling, and no matter how big an antenna and how much power you're running, you're not going to, like some of the guys did in the CB days, step on them and get over them. Not going to happen. I don't care what you got. You're not going to run over the pilot. So if you're going to make the contact, you got to get around the pilot. If the guy says he's operating 5 to 10 up, he's listening 5 to 10 up, the first thing you need to do is listen. Listen to that 5 to 10 up, tune back and forth, and listen to him, and find out what his operating pattern is. Once you discover how he's operating, most good operators, like Marty Lane, David Assif, these guys that go on DXpeditions, have a specific pattern that they like to use when they're operating. They'll make a call, and they'll pick out a call sign and answer it, and then they'll stay there on that frequency and operate until the pilot gets so heavy that they can't make out a call sign anymore. Then they'll move, either up or down. So what you need to do is set your VFO on your transmit VFO very wide. If you have an upscale receiver that actually has 2 receivers, makes it really nice, you can listen to the transmit frequency and your receive frequency at the same time. Listen for him to answer a station, and as soon as you hear him throw out a call sign, listen up the band where he's listening, tune back and forth very quickly and try to locate that guy. And when you locate him, make a mental note of the frequency he's on. Then when he calls again, throws out, answers another station, do the same thing. Sweep back and forth and find the guy that he called. Make a note of that frequency. It may be the same frequency, it may be up or down, 1 or 2 kc, but after listening like that for a little while, you'll discover that operator has a specific pattern. I've logged for David Assif before at field day, and I've watched him operate. I know his habits, so I had it real easy when he was on South Sandwich. I worked him several times on CW because I know how he operates and I knew where he was going next. But if you listen to the operator, you'll discover that he has a specific pattern. He's not just calling at random. And when you find that specific pattern, you jump up to where you know he's going next and throw your call out there. Now, there will still be a couple of hundred people calling on the same frequency with you, but it's better to be competing with a couple of hundred than it is with 10,000, right? So you increase your chances of making the contact dramatically if you know where he's going. And this is a technique that I've used in the past. You can narrow down your receiver for the DX station so that you get a nice clear copy on him. But on the VFO that you're going to be transmitting on, open that receiver wide open. Sounds horrible. All those stations in there. But what that will do is that will allow you to quickly locate the station that he's talking to. And once you locate it, make that mental note, listen for the next one. After 2 or 3, it doesn't take long to establish his pattern. And then you jump ahead of him and be there when he's ready for the next call. But that's what's worked for me. And there are other techniques that you can use, but that is one that I use that has worked for me. Let's talk a little bit about resources for DXing. If you're new to DXing, the best place I could send you is to a website of the Lone Star DX Association. It's dxer.org, dxer.org. The reason I like it is because it has everything located in. There's a nice group of DX clusters here. The one that I like best is DX Summit. Let's look at DX Summit. This is just raw data here, but if you'll wait a few seconds, it'll put it into a beautiful format that's really easy to read. And this will allow you to locate the DXpedition very quickly. There's the DX station is in the bold print, and there's the guy who's on the far left is the station who's spotting him, the frequency, and the name of the country on the far right. If you want to just look at DXpedition, for instance, right now, VK0EK is up. You can go up here into the search box and type in VK0EK. And it'll list all of the spots for VK0EK. There we go. There's all the bands that they're on currently, all the frequencies. So this used to be half the job, just locating the station. But now with these DX clusters, nothing to it. You just call them up and there they are. There's where all of them are. But that's a really nice feature that they have here on the website. If you want to look at the gray line, there's a gray line map. The gray line is where the terminator is on here, the difference between daylight and dark. We're right smack on the gray line at the moment. So if you look at that, this line around here, there's really good propagation around that line. If you want to talk to somebody in India, you aim your antenna over the North Pole, follow that gray line, and this map right here moves continually so that you can tell where the terminator is at any time. There's more information available. You can read about that, but that's one of the things that's real helpful if you're trying to work a rare station and propagation is not so great. As the sunspot cycle diminishes, it'll be more important to know where that gray line is. There are several news sheets. One that I like right here is announced DX operations. You can go here, and here's all of the major DXpeditions that are coming up in February, March, so forth. And they go all the way through the year. All of them that are listed. And this is a very good compilation, so you can see what's coming up in the future. So there's a lot of good information here on this website.
Very good. Everyone can hear me. I don't need to hold the microphone. What we're going to talk about today is what happens in a declared emergency on all the HF frequencies that, for the most part, very few people know about. Go back to this. FEMA has emergency support functions. This is communications is emergency support function 2. There are 15 of them that allow a measured response to an event that is ongoing. And this is how, during the flooding that just occurred recently, last Monday we had 590 new people show up in Baton Rouge. We put them across the street in the old distribution center, if you're familiar with the Gotchall's building. And we think they're going to be there about 2 years, and they're working through a ton of these emergency support functions. But the one we want to talk about is 2. Communications. ESF coordinator, primary agents, FEMA supported agencies are people who are out there. FEMA activates ESF2, says there's a disaster. In this case, the communications folks out of Denton brought 3 18-wheelers. One went to Baton Rouge, one went to Camp Beauregard, and the other one's out on the road supporting something. I don't know where it exactly is now. What they want to do is protect the communications infrastructure, make sure that the agencies and all the folks can communicate with each other, down to they even have fuel for towers if they can actually get it there. Scope of it is again, to maintain communications and to help the responding agencies perform their task.
Real quick, what exactly are they supporting? The tornadoes and bad weather from last month, or the flooding that we recently had?
Flooding we will recently have. The tornado disaster did not make the dollar cut for declared national disaster. It was declared for IA, individual assistance, and those folks can then register and find out what they're gonna, what kind of relief they could get.
Okay.
Okay, back to it. FEMA has high-frequency communications. This is, what are they, 7 radio services. A new land mobile network that is now all P25. It is mixed equipment back and forth. They buy a batch from whomever, and the next time they buy from somebody else. And then they have a ton of satellite and iridium phones and things that most of the time should work. A lot of the iridium phones have problems. So, what is in the HF communications band? It's the FEMA National Response Plan. You have the FEMA National Radio System, National Communication Systems, which we all know is shares. There's the Over-the-Horizon Network. If you may see these strange antennas here or there. I know there's one off of Barataria Boulevard in New Orleans. It looks like a spider web out in the woods. And it has no FCC tag on it, which is very interesting. And then where we are, Aries, Races, and Mars. This is the interoperability plan that is in place of how these services talk to each other. You have the FEMA network set up, you have the Network Communication Center, goes down to the FEMA stations, Mount Weather, and the regions, and then they can talk out broadly to anyone they need to communicate with. If you see at the top over here, Repeater has been rebooted by FEMA. It is actually up and operating again, and it is taking the primary position for amateur communications for declared disasters.
We never went away.
Yeah, I know, but most people don't. And the Repeater calls, once issued, the commission says are still usable. They are not at this point going to issue any more. That may change in the future. The FEMA Emergency Radio Network participants, FEMA regions, states, mostly it is 40 meters and 80 meters to us most of the time. It does go into to other places. There are some new ALE, automatic linking stations, that are on the networks. Shares is the one that is primarily used. This would be HF within the state. Again, it's daytime 40 meters or so, nighttime 80 meters, but then again, it can go anywhere and everywhere. This would be the bulk of what you would find operating in Louisiana from the non-amateur stations. Another odd one, Customs over the Horizon Network, that is linking the Customs, ICE, Coast Guard, other federal agencies, primarily with ships and aircraft. They do a lot of drug interdiction with it. The National Communications Network, it's the bulk of the people making it work. There's not a lot of external knowledge about it other than it exists. It has a dot on the org chart, and very few people know too much about what goes on behind their doors. Now, where does this get for the hams? The primary lead service for amateur radio right now is Mars. Mars is connecting the National Guard units with the EOCs, the Guard bases, and every other place they have it. The Army Mars and Air Force Mars are active in the state, and Navy Mars has gone away. Any general and above can join Mars, submit your application, there's training you go through. You then could be on the frequencies talking to the Guard units, moving traffic from one set of folks communicating that can't talk to another set of folks. That comes into the next use, which is Repeaters. Repeaters will be for amateur radio, the point of contact from the EOCs, the JFOs, FEMA Region 6, anywhere that they need to talk, then they're going to bring in the Repeaters stations. After Repeaters, it's our well-known Aries. Aries supports everything else. It's when we're the local folks. Red Cross, sheltering, city EOCs, parishes, wherever, that is where Aries would come in. On a typical disaster, the response phase is probably 3 days. You're on your own, FEMA hadn't gotten here yet, and it's going to be between, for the hams, between Repeaters and Aries to hold that 3 days to a week, as what was done with Katrina, to provide all of what was lost to the state. Again, here's the interoperability model. It may change a little bit, but they did a pretty decent job to show how these people interact with each other. This is how it's envisioned. Again, Mars with the primary mission of support of the National Guard, races between the EOCs, JFOs, and areas in local support from Red Cross down to the National Weather Service. And then everyone's funneling it back up to figure out what's going on. Go back to this. Questions about any of the model? Who talks to who when? None?
All right. Let me say a couple of things here. This talk is on repeater etiquette. It's not certainly not a lecture on how to operate a repeater or how a repeater operates, but just some general guidelines for operating on a local repeater. By the time I'm finished with the talk, you're probably going to be thinking, well, I've heard old Brook do this or that I just suggested that you're not doing. You'd probably be right. Okay, but some of them are rules. Some of these, the things we'll talk about are rules that you have to follow, and the rest are just general guidelines, standard, common practices on the repeater that you'll hear just in normal operation. Not talking about how a repeater operates, but here's a block diagram of a repeater. What do you notice up there? There's a receiver and a transmitter. How many receivers are on a repeater? One, which means only one person can talk at a time, right? Very important rule. And since only one person can talk at a time, that means everybody else is listening, all right? Because I think the very first most important rule in practice on a repeater is listen, right? Listen before you transmit. If you're new to the repeater, listen to see how other people operate on it. You kind of want to do the same thing that they do. There's just a few rules here that we have. One is, of course, transmitter power. You're not supposed to use any more power than necessary to complete your transmissions. Of course, you can use too little power. Maybe you have one of the brand new handy talkies and you're operating inside the car with a rubber duck and it's just not quite enough power. So that's kind of hard for the other people that you're talking to understand you. And it gets sometimes a little frustrating because you have to always repeat what you said and nobody can really follow what you're saying. Station identification, very important. All right, the rules say that you need to identify at least once every 10 minutes. All right, at least once every 10 minutes, your call sign. And when you finish the QSO, when you finish with your conversation there. We probably, this club on the 7-9, probably, if anything, over-identify. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, you can identify so much, it just takes a little more time, a few more words. And one of the rules, no station may transmit unidentified communications. Of course, what's the most common example of that? That's your kerchunk the repeater. I just want to see if I can hit the repeater. I don't really want to put my call sign out. I never do that, but I've heard a lot of people that do that, okay? Obviously, of course, that's illegal. You can't make an unidentified transmission. It's easy enough just to give your call sign. If all you want to do is see if you can hit through, say, N5 DGK testing, all right? And that tells everybody, this guy's on the air, not really interested in making a QSO or having a conversation, but I just want to see if I can hit the repeater, and you identified, so now you're legal. Prohibited transmissions. Music. You can't rebroadcast music. And you say, who does that? If you're in your mobile station, if you're in your car and the radio's playing, it does two things. The music's getting broadcast, which is a violation of the rules, and it makes you harder to understand. To the folks that they hear the music, and don't hear you as well as they should have. Of course, obscene or indecent words and so on. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in having a QSO. Let's see. Here you go. Language. Language. We already talked about this. First rule of repeater etiquette is to listen. Use plain English. Right? A repeater is not HF. It's FM. It's high quality. You're usually in the local area. You have a good quality signal. You just talk. Right? It's not CB. I don't want to offend anybody, but there's CB, and it has a certain language, and we're amateur radio operators, licensed, and all that sort of stuff, studied, and we just talk different, right? Just use plain English. You don't normally need to use phonetics on a repeater, right? It's good signal. You should be able to be understood. Maybe you're on the fringe of the repeater, okay? Maybe you don't have quite enough power, whatever. Then you use phonetics. But as a general rule, you just give your call sign. You don't normally have to spell things. Q signals, right? Q signals, as everybody knows, were built for CW, for Morse code transmission. You can get a message across in as few letters as possible. There's nothing wrong with using, it's not against the law to use Q signals on the repeater. It's just, they're not necessary. If you need to ask somebody where they're located, just ask them where you're located, okay? But if you say, what's your QTH, everybody understands that too. Very important. If you're going to be critical about something, if there's something you don't like, right, do it off the air. Don't criticize people or policies or your fine board members or anything like that on the air. Probably nobody but you wants to hear that, so it's best to keep that off there, and of course, avoid controversial subjects. That you don't know who's listening, and there's always a lot more people listening than you think, and when you talk about controversial subject, everybody hears about it, and you're generally not making friends. So, we're all gentlemen, we're all professionals, we're all polite. Yes, sir.
Could I add one to your list?
Sure.
The thing that sometimes gets me is somebody will call in and they'll give their call sign so fast there's no way you can catch it. I mean,
Sure.
I know you're longtime operators, you're used to doing this. Some of us that aren't so long-term, we have trouble understanding. But
You're exactly right. Nobody knows their own call sign better than you, better than yourself, right? But not everybody else is as familiar with it. That's exactly right. Do a nice, you don't have to spell it out where it takes 10 seconds to give you a call, but just slow so everybody can understand it. That's a good point. You know, and there's one other thing, when you give your call sign, the identification we talked about, I don't really find it's necessary to say when you identify that you say N5DGK for ID. Well, if you think about it, why else would you give your call sign except for identification? It's just an observation. That's all. How to make a QSO, okay? Lots of different ways. Top of this, directed call. Directed call. You want to talk to somebody in particular, right? I'm going to call just that person. N5KIP from N5DGK. That's all you have to do. You give the name of the station you want to talk to first, right? You might even say it a couple of times. Maybe if you give his call sign twice, then he's sure to hear it if he's on the air, right? Then you give your call and you just wait. You might wait a minute or two, give a call again, and either he's not on the air or he just doesn't want to talk to me. Either way, you can stop after a couple of tries. Monitoring, all right? The repeater is quiet, okay? The repeater is quiet. You say, you know what, I'd like to have a chat with anybody. You can just give your call sign. N5DGK monitoring, N5DGK listening. All of that means is I'm here, and this is me, and I'm ready to talk to anybody that'll talk back to me. Maybe nobody answers, okay? Call again in a few minutes. One of the things, you don't want to do is sound like you're pleading for someone to talk to you, okay? Because if maybe nobody's on the air, maybe everybody's too busy. The other thing on monitoring, sometimes, we talked about you'd use your call sign and just use the word testing. Maybe you're trying to get your an antenna adjusted or whatever, but when you say testing at the end, that means I generally don't want to engage in a conversation. If you just put out your call sign, okay, I'd like to talk to anybody that answers. Joining a QSO in progress, right? Two guys are talking. Now this is where you need to listen just a little bit. Maybe there's two guys, there's Dana and Daniel, and they're talking rocket science stuff. Man, they're talking high level. They probably don't want to hear, if you interrupt to talk about muscle cars or something, okay? So listen to what's going on before you just jump in and say, what y'all doing? I'd like to talk to y'all, okay? But if it's just two guys or three guys and they're chatting about the weather and just general stuff, sure, you can jump in. And then it's kind of a responsibility of the folks that were already in the QSO. They need to go ahead and acknowledge the guy that would like to talk, right? Because what's the other rule? Nobody owns a frequency. Nobody owns a frequency. And we're trying to be polite here. Might be a new hand. Might be a new hand. He wants to chat. He's got his new radio. He's so proud of it. His license came in the mail, and he's ready to make a contact, and nobody will talk to him. So you need to remember that. Interrupting a QSO to make a call. Let's say there's, yes, Daniel.
So you might tell us over how to do that, how to join a QSO.
Oh, okay. I beg your pardon. I skipped over that, didn't I? Okay, a couple guys, Dana and Daniel, are talking, just general stuff, and I'm going to wait until there's a break in between those two are talking. One of them's going to unkey, and what do I wait for? There's a little beep at the end of their transmission. That's a courtesy tone on the repeater, and that courtesy tone is there for the next guy, Daniel. He's not going to start responding to Dana until he hears that courtesy tone. And the courtesy tone does two things. One, it keeps the other guy from transmitting and gives me a chance to slip in there before he starts talking, right? Because if the repeater's transmitting, you can't hear me. The other thing the courtesy tone does, there's a timer on the repeater. The 7.9 has one. If you get somebody really long-winded, or what more commonly happens is the microphone gets stuck. You drop it between the seats or something, microphone is stuck. Hopefully you're not talking, embarrassing subjects and so on. But the repeater's going to time out, all right? So it doesn't just sit there and transmit all day. It's going to stop transmitting. That tone lets you know that the repeater timeout timer is reset, okay? So two things. If you're talking back and forth, let the beep sound before you reply. Give the third guy the chance to break in there. Now, when I'm talking, and those two guys were nice enough to let me join their QSO, now we have a round table. We got more than two guys. We got three guys talking, four, whatever. And usually what you do in a round table, it gets passed on to the next guy, right? Dana talks to Daniel, and Daniel passes it to me, and I pass it back to Dana, and everybody gets a chance to talk, right? Maybe Dick's going to break in. We'll recognize him. And normally, the guy that would recognize Dick and let him in is the guy that would go to next on the round table. And another real good procedure to follow in a round table is when you're finished talking, hand it off to the next guy. Okay? Don't just stop. Well, everything's great, guys. See y'all later. And there's three other guys. Well, who talks next? Nobody knows. And generally, for a few seconds, there's silence. Because nobody knows if they should talk. And then at least two of them are going to start talking at the same time. Nobody can hear anything. Always, when you're talking, you're in control of the repeater, of the frequency, at least for that brief period. When you're done, hand it off to the next guy. Make sure everybody knows who it goes to next. Pause a couple seconds between transmissions. Always nice to let somebody, you don't want to hog. Keep your conversations brief. Remember, the repeater is a shared resource. Only one guy can talk at a time, and if you tie it up, nobody else can chat. If you need to talk a lot longer, and you're close enough, you can get off the repeater and go to simplex, right? If you're close enough, talk to each other directly, and you don't tie up the repeater, and you still have your conversation done. Signal reports, okay? A signal report. You don't need your S meter. See, it's not HF. So when somebody asks, how do I sound? I'm getting close. I'm talking fast. Okay. How do I sound? What they want to know is what's their audio quality. How do I sound? You don't even need your S meter. Don't look at it. You're full quieting. There's no noise in the background with you. You know, if you were to stop talking, I wouldn't hear anything. Maybe some road noise, whatever. You're full quieting. Or you got some scratchiness with you. You're dropping out of the repeater or whatever. But no signal reports. Readability is what they're really concerned with. A good report, a good signal report on the repeater is say, you're full quieting, not you're 20 over 9, right? That's how you hear the repeater, not how the repeater hears them. That's what they're interested in. What do you do when you have malicious interference? Somebody is intentionally interfering with your conversation, okay? The chunking, touch tones, whatever, just talking on top of you. The most important thing is don't acknowledge it. Just leave it alone. When they realize that their interference is not having any of the desired effect, they're going to quit and move on. If they don't, you quit and move on. Go to another repeater or just sign off the air. If there's nobody there to bother, they'll quit. Okay? Emergencies. There's a QSO in progress. You need to report an emergency. You need some immediate access to the repeater to make a call or whatever. Normally, the word that you use is break. Okay? It's not breaker, it's not CB, but just break. And that tells everybody on the repeater there is some priority traffic coming. If you hear that in between transit, immediately relinquish the repeater to them. Let the guy that made the break call, let him go. Okay? Obviously, he has something very important to report. The word emergency is good. Again, remember, it's local communications, FM on the repeater should be very high quality. You ought to be able to understand any of these words. Mayday is another nationally, internationally understood term for emergency. Okay? Plain language works the best. We're just talking, right? Talk slowly. Sometimes it's easy to get excited. You talk too fast, and you have to repeat everything because you weren't understanding it. And give accurate details. If you're given a location of a fire, a down power line, whatever, it's not just on Florida Boulevard. You need to give some specific details because somebody has to go find it. Okay? I'm out of time now. This was going to be my first slide, which is they were teaching this guy about repeater etiquette. Okay? Any questions? Everybody understands? I've broken all those rules.
We did have a few announcements, and I've been projecting some of these earlier. Let's see, I think what I'll do is, John wanted to talk a little bit about the website.
Yeah, I'd like John Kropsky to come up. He's been working, he's our webmaster, and John is putting together a lot of content on our website. And John, if you could bring that up. I'm going to make a few announcements real quickly to let you people know what's going on. First change in our schedule, the VE testing that we had scheduled on the calendar, it was for this Thursday, March 31st, in this building. That's changed to April 7th, next Thursday. And Buddy will be conducting that testing up in the technology lab. It's at 6 o'clock. And again, remember, any class license we will test for, and you don't have to have a reservation to come in. US Kidd, we had a very good operation on March 29th. Buddy, that was Vietnam Vets Day. Did you want to say anything to the group, tell them anything?
Not really, but I will take the opportunity to thank everybody that came and operated. It was a very successful operation. 100 and, Brett, do you remember? 120, 25 contacts.
Yeah,
Not bad for an impromptu operation.
Yeah, they were over 50.
Bad bands.
Yeah, bad bands, but they were over 50 when I left, so it was good. Yeah,
It was very good.
40 meters worked real well.
Now, where we are really going to need everybody's help is we have two events, two kid events, very close to each other. May 21st is a Saturday, and that's Armed Forces Day, and we're going to be operating the Kidd 10 to 4, just like we did for Vietnam Vets Day. So that's coming up in May, but right behind that is U.S. Museum ships on the air.
Not U.S., all over the world.
All over the world? Okay. Any museum ship that's got an amateur radio station on it in the world, they're going to activate them, and that's on June 5th and June 6th. That's a Saturday and Sunday. They do it every year. Chasers can get certificates for working so many ships. They have a website saying what ships are on the air. We are going to be looking for operators to fill spots, operators and loggers for those 2 days, Saturday and Sunday. So you'll see more in RF News on that. The last thing I wanted to mention before John talks about this is I had a lot of fun going out with Brett on national parks on the air. Did it for the first time. I went down to Barataria with Brett, and he and I operated along with his family, made a lot of contacts. I'll tell you, even with 100 watts, battery power, a long wire antenna up about 25 feet, we were working the southern states all the way across. Brett, I think we worked like 20 states and got all the way up to Wisconsin, so I was happy about that. But Brett, do you want to say anything to the group about upcoming operations you have going on?
Yeah, I'll go next. I mean, or I can go now, I guess. I had a couple more.
Okay, do you have any slides that you want to show?
No, I don't have any slides. I just have some upcoming dates.
Why don't you go ahead right now, and then we'll finish up with the website.
This weekend will be in Natchez, Mississippi. If you're interested in operating, we're going to go there Friday through Sunday. And it's one of the rarer parks right now. It's only been on the air the only other day we were up there in February, so it's going to be sought after. Planning to be on 40 meters. That's this Friday. And then we'll be in Lafayette, which will be the closest national historical park to Baton Rouge, April 22nd, and then Saturday the 23rd. We're planning to be on the air from 9 to 2 on Friday, and then 8 to 12 on Saturday, if you're interested, looking for operators there. Also this weekend is the Mississippi QSO Party, if you're looking for any counties in Mississippi. We also have the Monroe Ham Fest is coming up on the 16th of April, Saturday. The next day will be the Rookie Roundup, the 17th, the Sunday. If you're a newly licensed ham, I think it's 2 years or under, participate in that. And then we do have another VE test that will be before the next club meeting on the 26th.
Right. What you're going to see here in a minute is John is going to show you, we're going to have a calendar on our website that's going to be kept up to date. You'll be able to go to that calendar and scroll all the way through the months till the end of the year and see events that we have coming up. So that's great. The last thing I wanted to say before I turn it over to John is Thornton, our public information officer. Hold up your hand, Thornton. You've been doing some things. I know you've been working with the Advocate. You got our picture. We got our picture in the Advocate for one of our meetings. Why don't you tell the group what you're doing?
Well, I think you've said it all. I try to take pictures, and I want to take a picture tonight of the presenters and one or two of the club members that we don't have a picture of so far. Just to put it in the Advocate to let the readers know, the population know that we exist and what we're doing. I also talked with Mary Stein, who's the assistant director for the library system, and she's going to be working with us on our next, it's a little late this time, but on our next classes to go ahead and get published and so, publicized and so forth. So, and hopefully I'll be able to get a reporter to come out on field day, but that's a gift.
Good.
But anyway, if you don't work at it, you don't get it.
And that signage you see, Thornton had the signage made. We're using signage at the Kidd. We're using it at National Parks on the Air. And here at the library, we've got it set up. So that's working out nicely. Last thing, one other person. Ken, why don't you just update everybody on our new repeaters that are going to be coming in here shortly. You heard about how to operate the repeaters. We have some new equipment that's coming in.
Now, we have on order another repeater for the 2-meter repeater, and we've had some difficulties with the existing repeater. We think we'll get better performance out of the new one. So it's been placed on order and expected delivery in 1 to 2 months. The 70 centimeter repeater is off the air and not really practical to repair. So we've authorized a new repeater which we plan to purchase and put on the air, and I'm not sure exactly what the schedule on it is. We still have, I think, some duplexers to locate, so.
And this is Yaesu equipment, right?
Beg pardon?
Yaesu equipment?
Yes, it's all Yaesu Fusion repeaters. They had a special on repeaters. The normal price is around $1,600, and we're able to purchase them for $500 to $600. So it's and that special is expiring at the end of this month. So we're able to get repeaters at good prices. So it should be some improvement.
Good, thanks.
And I volunteered to help put them in.
Good, okay, thanks, Dan. Okay, John, I'm gonna turn it over to you, and you can show everybody what you've got going here.
Well, last year, John recruited me to help out with the website a bit, since I've done some of that on some other sites, and then got together with Daniel, and he loaned me the keys to the car so we could drive it around a bit and see what I could do with it. A lot of content's been there for a while, and I've enjoyed adding new stuff to it. Got familiar with WordPress, which this is based on. Anyway, try to get the basic information on the home page here. I know we've had some contacts from folks who were looking for the club meeting or what was going on, and went to the website to look for that. So try to feature a little bit of what's coming up there. We've got these menu tabs across the top, and I've added some new ones to it. There's a contact page here that's been there, but it has all of our current officers and committees and directors there, and some profiles of the several of the board members here, as you can see. Let's see, page down. So those are up there. And education, we've had quite a bit of new information that's come in on there, mostly highlighting the classes going on. And I think we have some of the past class information here that I need to take out, but that's a continual turnover. Photos has a lot, been putting a lot of photos of various events there, including the USS Kidd and the National Parks on the Air. Got the schedule there, and here's recognition for the work with the Boy Scouts. Radio Merit Badge. There's the holiday banquet back in December, and any of the photos you can click on to blow up to a larger size. And there's a pretty good spread for Field Day on here also. And been experimenting with a couple different calendar options. There are bunches of, anybody knows about WordPress, there are bunches of plugins that you can add to it. And there were two popular ones for calendars. And the first one I tried, I liked pretty well, but it has a bug that's appeared, and I'm following that in the forums right now. And see if they get it resolved, but I think that the brightness is a little, makes it a little hard to see, but if you hover over a particular item in the calendar, you about that particular event with the, if you put the location there, there'll be a map available that you can get directions to it. But the bug is that you click on the button to go to next month and it doesn't work.
Oh.
But there have been some 16 postings about that in the forum, and I'm hoping that they get that resolved. Here's an example for the recent USS Kidd operation, and you can see the hours and the location and so forth. So there's another calendar plugin I'm trying out, but it's not as fancy as this one, but its button works to go to next month. And there's also an option to use Google Calendar. So still working on that, but any questions about the web page content or any suggestions of what to include there?
Using Google Calendar would be nice because then anybody interested would just have to subscribe to the club's public calendar, and they'd get all the events added to theirs.
Okay. Yeah, there's a plug-in for that, and I was thinking about adding that one to try it out, give it a try and see what it looks like and how it works.
You can pull the script, pull some scripting from Google and just put that in the code, and you'll get the Google Calendar rendered right there in the page. Yeah, don't really even need a plug-in to do it.
Okay. Yep. So anything else?
It would be a good idea to get maybe 1,000 or so business cards with our club logo and web address, and just have them pass out to people wanting to be able to find the club.
Yeah, that's certainly an option. And I should mention too that on the right-hand side of the page, there's a column there with postings from Facebook, which I believe Robin puts in there. So they appear in there automatically whenever some of those are added. Yes.
It'd be nice to have a little section of swap, or if you have something you'd like to sell or swap, it's listed on here.
Okay. That's a thought. I know some of that's covered in our RF news.
Yeah, I think
It could certainly be added. Yes.
Do you have a place where you can pay your dues, the PayPal, something like that? I heard there was, but I never could find it.
I never.
Not on here, but Ken has a site to go to where you can pay your dues.
Yeah, but shouldn't it be on the contact or something to where you can just click on it and join?
Sure, it could be
join BRARC.
We sent out invoices and you could pay through PayPal or any major credit card.
Right, we're just saying there should be like a online form that you can just click on the website and join online or.
PayPal doesn't exactly support
redo.
that. It is something that Square would do, I think.
Yeah, Square.
Yeah. I've got a link to a copy of the membership application here, but it's just a static copy that you could print out. It's not.
We could look at that.
Yeah, that's be a little.
If it's a fillable form, then that form could be in theory filled out and then printed to a PDF printer and then emailed in along with the payment if it
Maybe with a credit card.
PayPal.
Yeah. Daniel,
Daniel.
Can I make a suggestion?
please.
Yeah.
If people have suggestions, they should email them to the club, rather than, because this is not revise the website night. Because, people have suggestions, but nobody's writing them down, so it's, people should just email them in.
They'll be on
They
the.
have them.
Okay, good suggestion. So, anything else? I didn't expect to get so much participation.
That's great. Appreciate the work.
That's good.
John, I'd just like to say we appreciate you doing that. That's
Yes.
A lot of work. Thank you. Thank you.